had a report from some precinct that there was some unusual going on in an apartment building.
At 130 Clarkson Avenue in Brooklyn, which incredibly, could you imagine this, was the same building, apartment building, that Frank Matthews was living in. You know, we talk about Frank Lucas, right? We talk about Mickey Barnes. They were essentially New York dealers. He wasn't investigated. He probably would have set up a truly national and then eventually an international network that would have just boggled the mind.
He was in a league of his own. Recent movies on Lucas being the king of drugs, that's not true. And Matthews was the #1 heroin pioneer.
Nicky Barnes and all them, they wasn't nothing. He couldn't touch Frank. I don't know why they built him up like that. Nicky Barnes was supplying New York. Frank was supplying about 25 states.
Had he not been, his wings not been clipped in '72, he would have ruled the United States.
In my opinion, Frank Matthews was a much larger drug dealer than Frank Lucas.
He was a top, not only an organizer, but a businessman. But he bought a whole series of parcels of land where he was informed the federal highway was going to go in. Had that gone through, he would have been a multi-millionaire just on the real estate.
It became almost like a perfect storm. And I was thrown right in the middle of that in 1971. I had a front row seat to what was really going on.
When you think about New York City in the 70s, I mean, you looked over your shoulder 3 or 4 times before you got to the train station or your car. I mean, it was a gangster town. You know, nobody wanted to go to New York City. The politicians made a lot of noise. The media focused on that, which forced law enforcement to go after those guys that were dealing heroin.
This is a story that I know to be true, you know, because I was there when the gentleman asked him and reminded him. He had given $1 million to a friend to hold and disappeared again. So when the gentleman sees him again, he say, "Frank, when you gonna come get that money?" And Frank goes, "What money?" He said, "Yo, man, you remember you gave me the shopping bag, those shopping bags, that money?" He said, "I'll come get it in a week or so." So how much money does he have?
And Frank Matthews at that time, I think, was probably under 30 years old, was extremely bright, had good leadership skills, and had convened a meeting of all of the top African-American and Hispanic drug dealers in Atlanta, Georgia, in 1971. His goal was to unite and form a family where they cut out the Italian mafia and went right to the source of heroin and brought it in and controlled the distribution.
Miami, Baltimore, Philadelphia, and Atlanta, similar information was coming back. Some guy named Matthews was behind the local organizations in those cities.
He was a guy that had great leadership skills and knew how to control a product, make distribution all along the East Coast, and control an organization through violence.
We lived in poor housing. From that poor housing, we went to poor schools, received a poor education. It returned us right back into the poor community.
I grew up on a small tobacco farm in eastern North Carolina, not far from where Frank lived. And I actually grew up in sort of similar circumstances. You know, my father was a sharecropper.
In 1959, I went to New York as a gambler. See, I used to gamble, play crab cards. I was what you call a Solomon.
I had a lot of sympathy for them. A lot of them were extremely intelligent.
We didn't have many choices, so if you don't have a choice, you have to take a chance.
They could not make money in the real world. They were not given the education opportunities that the whites had.
So a lot of us took to what was available for us. A drug connection was sacred. If you had a drug connection, man, you had something going on.
He did go down to Venezuela, Caracas. And he was awaiting the delivery of 60 pounds of heroin.